Hello and welcome to my painting video. In this video I'll be painting a Putrid Blightkings. The Blightkings all look very unique and that's what makes them so appealing to me. I'll be using the same techniques for all Blightkings, but as you can see here they all look vastly different. Let's begin, shall we? After spraying the models with Wraithbone, I start with the diseased skin. First, I base coat with Rakarth Flesh. Then I wash all the skin with Reikland Fleshshade. Around the open wounds and sores, I wash some Carroburg Crimson. On the innermost parts of the wounds, I wash Druchii Violet. Now it's starting to look a bit more disgusting. Then I go back with Rakarth Flesh to bring back some of the original color. Here I didn't water down the paint enough, so it's a bit too thick. Water down your paints. For a final highlight of the flesh, I use Flayed One Flesh. Next, I paint all the boils with Iyanden Yellow contrast paint. And then I dot the boils with Flesh Gitz Yellow. Lastly, I dot again with Screaming Skull. On some models, I glaze the skin with Lamenters Yellow to make certain areas look a bit more sickly. On to the final steps. First, I use a watered down Blood for the Blood God to make the wounds look more gory. And finally, I apply Nurgles Rot to make everything look more disgusting. On this particular model, I started with the skin as that is the biggest area. I would suggest to always look for the biggest area to start painting. For some, that could be the armor. On to the black armor. In this case of the model, it's only the boots and the gauntlet. First, I base coat with Incubi Darkness. Then I give it a wash of Nuln Oil. I layer back some of the Incubi Darkness. Be sure to leave the recesses alone. Next, I highlight the armor with Kabalite Green. Followed by a highlight of Ogryn Camo. Lastly, I paint dots of Nurgles Rot and drag the brush down to make it look like the rot is oozing from the armor. I really love this greenish dark armor and it works really well when the skin or the attributes are a bit brighter on the model. But I also have another shade of armor that you can also use. This green armor is more in line with the classic Deathguard shade. First, I base coat with Deathguard Green. Then I give it a thick wash of Agrax Earthshade. Next, I dry brush the armor with Elysian Green. And I dry brush again with Ogryn Camo. I wash the armor with Reikland Fleshshade. This gives the armor that dirty quality we're looking for in Nurgle models. And finally, a little highlight of Ogryn Camo to help pop the armor a bit. Personally, I like using both of these shades of armor as you saw with the other model. But feel free to mix and match as you please. On to some of the details. After cleaning up all the bone parts with Wraithbone, I washed them with Skeleton Horde. And give them a highlight of Screaming Skull. For the leather, I decided to keep it nice and simple with just a coat of Gore-Grunta Fur, mainly to differentiate between the wood and the leather. For the wood, I used the contrast paint Wildwood. And I give it a highlight of Baneblade Brown. Nurgle uses a lot of metal and brass parts on the models. The metal parts I base coat with Leadbelcher. And the brass parts I base coat with Balthasar Gold. Then I give all those parts a thick wash of Agrax Earthshade. And a highlight of Stormhost Silver. For the metal parts, I dry brush Ryza Rust for some nice and easy rust effects. Then I apply Nihilakh Oxide to give that verdigris effect. This is an old school but effective method to paint metal and brass. I have grown a liking to using contrast paints for metal, but I decided against this for my Maggotkin army. On to the final section, which is cloth. Different colors of cloth can be used, and I decided to go with purple, as green and purple are those classic Nurgle colors. I base coat with Shyish Purple. Then I layer Genestealer Purple on the raised parts. And I highlight the cloth with Slaanesh Grey. And here we have some fat lumbering Putrid Blightkings. Both are painted with the same techniques I just discussed, and I think they look proper ghastly. Now to paint 7 more of these beasts, and then my starter army is starting to take some form. Thanks for watching!